Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane, and I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts. And I'm very excited to be here for our second session with Jeff DePaoli, host of That Halloween podcast, and Nicki
Tracchia.
Tracchia. I was going to ask you before we started. I completely forgot.
Nobody gets it.
Is it the Italian way or the Boston way?
Yeah.
Tracchia. Okay. So, and Nicki Tracchia from Haunted Overload. Keep wanting to call it Overlord because that sounds scary to me. But Overload up in New Hampshire, and we're going to be talking all about that. But before we get to it, I just want to say thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library for supporting all of our programming, and to Jeff and Nicki who let us share this program with other libraries, because when libraries work together, we make magic. So you can ask questions in the Q&A. There's a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and chat with each other throughout in the chat. I'm going to hand this over to Jeff. Thank you so much for this series. It's really, really fun.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mina. I am so excited to be here because if you don't know, I am a huge Halloween fan. It is my favorite day of the year. I'm stoked to talk to Nicki because I am a huge Haunted Overload fan. I grew up in Massachusetts, but I must say I discovered Haunted Overload living in Los Angeles. I moved here a while ago, and I discovered it like through some documentary or something. I was like, wait a sec, this is like not far from where I grew up. Where has this been all my life? It's incredible, and I can't recommend it enough. And I guarantee folks watching today are going to want to check this out come the Halloween season. I'll show you photos, I'll show you videos so you can see what we're talking about. But before we get to any of that, I just want to start with, first of all, thank you, Nicki. And second of all, if you can say what your role is with Haunted Overload and just the real beginnings of how it all started.
So I technically started as a set builder. My goal was to just create, and I got peer pressured into acting. So I'm also a scare actor now. So Haunted Overload used to be a home haunt, and it was at Eric's house, and that started with him.
Eric Lother, correct?
Yep. And so when he was 12 years old, he used to do like little haunted houses at his friend's house and his friend's basement and his grandparents' house. In 2001, he and his wife bought their very first house, and he started the home haunt in the yard, and he didn't have a lot of yard space. So he had to basically build really tall, scary monsters upwards rather than outwards because of the lack of space. The very next year, he decided to build a 30-foot high scarecrow, like monster thing, pumpkin guy, I believe. And he wanted to throw like the biggest Halloween party. And I believe that was when, or the next few years, he was able to there it is. He was able to turn it into a fundraiser for like homeless animals. And by 2005, I have a little note, my little notes here. By 2005, he went to Transworld trade shows for the first time to try and figure out how to turn his home haunt into a professional level haunt. And by 2007, this that you see here, all of this got too crazy. I wish I was able to send you Artifact Images did like a time lapse, a back in the day time lapse of the people waiting in line outside of his house. So obviously that didn't fly for very long before the cops were like, you can't do this anymore, it's dangerous. So he had to decide to quit the haunt thing or move it and turn it into like a world-class haunted attraction. So in 2010, Eric moved to Copple House Farm, and by that time 2007, sorry, 2007 he moved to Copple House Farm, and he was there for about 3 years, and he had to move again in 2010, and he moved it to DeMeritt Hill Farm, which is where we are now. And that also is when it officially became a world-class haunted attraction once it moved to DeMeritt Hill Farm. And that was also when before he moved, he did his first seminar at Transworld, like his own haunt seminar where people were now coming to learn from him how to do their home haunt. So in 2011, they were officially starting to donate to Pope Memorial Humane Society, which is the animal shelter we donate to now. So that was 2011. And in 2022, we officially donated $500,000 to the shelter in that time span. Because of our day haunts, we also have a day where people can walk their pets. And all those
Oh, we'll
proceeds
get to
go.
all of that. We're going to talk about all the different offerings that Haunted Overload has. But that's the great introduction of how it all started. As you can see in this photo, first of all, there are houses on either side. So you can just see he was in a typical suburban neighborhood, only had so much land to play with. So he said, let's grow high, tall, because that's the only direction we can go, right? And so that's kind of how this
I
all
do want to
started.
mention a lot of this stuff
Yep.
that you see in this picture is still at the haunt today. Like the heads on those pumpkin scarecrows are still on our current scarecrows.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to show a little video, so we'll be quiet for a second. So for those of you who haven't experienced Haunted Overload, check this out. It is pretty darn cool. There we go. Haunted Overload is a mood, to say the least. It's quite incredible. Everything is massive and oversized. And these days, what's the name of the farm again that you're on?
DeMeritt Hill Farm.
And that is in Lee, New Hampshire. And it is like, it's a farm, but there's this wooded area that y'all get to play in and create these huge set pieces. And I'd love to just kind of talk a little bit about, that location. And first of all, one of the privileges y'all have is like, you don't have to tear down at the end of every Halloween season. You're open September, October, but this stuff stays up, and therefore you can create these grandiose pieces, and it just kind of lives through the winter and everything, right?
We try to make it live through the winter. So we do take some things down or in. There's like a lot of dressing that we have to do to the haunt with like natural materials like corn stalks and the pumpkins and the hay bales. That all gets trashed. There's a lot of stuff that gets hung up. Like, for example, the circus tent has tons of like posters and props that come out, props that are really expensive. We get all of our props, or all of the props we've been using of the bodies and stuff from Ghost Ride. And so we put those away. It also it protects them from like the weathering, the bleaching from the sun, rodents chewing away at them, which happens a lot. We actually had a really cool opportunity where he came and showed us how to repair them, which is like amazing because they all need it eventually, to hopefully keep them like lasting a lot longer. As for like big structures and buildings, I think the hope is that we get 10 years out of them before we need to like really be doing demolition. But at the point that I started, A lot of the buildings are 10 years old. And so it's like sad. One of my favorite monsters was the cactus skull, which was in the end of that video. I'm glad he got a feature. He is a gargoyle now, but he was falling apart and it like could have really hurt somebody, us or visitors. And so when things are compromised, we just have to take them down and build something new. But I mean, it gives an opportunity to build a completely new scene. Like the Devil's Den was a completely new scene that I got to participate in building and watching come to life. But it used to be something else. So it also helps to change it up because there's some people who have been coming for 20 years and you know you don't want them to get bored and see the same stuff all the time. So there's always changes happening each year. A lot of times it's might seem small, but it's a lot of work. It's an entire spring, summer, and fall worth of work. And a lot of it is just trying to keep like the circus tent floor. It's like that gets repaired every year. The mansion floor gets repaired quite often because it's just so much water damage and just everything else. The body bags, very tedious, time consuming repairs because of the sun. It's really the sun that does a lot of the damage and a lot of the wetness, especially like last summer, it was just constant rain, which held up projects, but also caused a lot of damage. So we try our best to build and prepare and make things in a way that they can last through the weather. But I mean, ultimately it's constant work. It's a labor of love. But the goal is to keep them standing as long as possible so that, you know, we have less work to do later.
So that's some of the negatives that come with having a haunt in the middle of the woods, outdoors, you know, being affected by the elements. But talk to me about some of the positives because, oh my gosh, there, as a guest, there are so many.
The positives are that it's literally in the middle of the woods. And other than the road, which most of the time with the sound and the lights on, you don't even notice, and you definitely don't hear it at night. You feel like you really are in the middle of the woods and we can use that to our advantage. Like he uses it to his advantage for the fog, for the lighting, for even like the way the giant reapers are posing. It's all based around the trees. I have been to several haunts, mostly indoors, and then even guest acted at haunts indoors, and then of course acting here. And it's like a whole world of difference. They both have things I love, but I'm grateful that the haunt that's my home haunt is outside because it's completely different. And it's like even the worst rain that I've experienced being an actor, you wouldn't believe the guests who come, who show up. Like there's of course the people who are like, no, I'm not going, even though I have my ticket. But the people who show up in the pouring rain are the funnest guests that you ever have. And it's like the funnest night that you have. It doesn't matter that it's pouring buckets and you might die. It's fine. Like you might slide under something and get lost forever, but it's a lot of fun. So no matter what the weather holds, like last season, it was really hot. You know, our costumes are designed for cold weather. It's supposed to be October. So you know, one of my characters is Chainsaw. So it's like me and Morgan do Chainsaw together and we're running around sweating to death because it's for some reason 76 degrees in the middle of October. But it's, you know, you just have to get into the character of it and not care about that stuff. And I would much rather it be kind of unpredictable like that outside because it kind of sets the tone for what kind of night you're going to have acting as your character. And sometimes you can decide like, oh, if it's pouring out, many of our actors, especially our veteran actors, have a costume backup for that. Like, oh, this is my rain costume. And then this is my really cold weather costume. And so you kind of learn to be prepared for whatever it's going to throw at you. But the best part of it being outside, I think, would be the day walk because you can see everything during the day and it doesn't change anything that it's completely bright outside because of the woods. And no matter what the scene is, it doesn't, the woods don't take away from it, they add from it, no matter what the scene is. Like even the nursery, it's almost like an abandoned nursery. It's like half dilapidated on purpose. And it looks amazing. Same thing with the circus tent. It's obviously a very structurally sound circus tent, but it looks abandoned and there's like trees everywhere. So it just, no matter what, he makes the woods work with the scene, and he refuses to cut trees down. So it's a lot of leaves. Wallace Valley, he's our leaf blower. We would die without him. So he does a million other things too, but the leaves is no joke. The amount of time he spends clearing the trails when for patrons to come each weekend. So, but yeah.
That's awesome. Now you started in construction, right? And was that like your background, construction?
I mean, no. So I really started, I wanted to like, so I love the Stan Winston School of Art. I love art and creating, and I excelled in art in school and stuff like that. And I really wanted to try any creative project Eric was willing to give me. It was a lot of raking leaves for a while, which I would still do today. I don't really care. It's a great workout and it's just fun to be there. A lot of times my job is just stacking lumber. I'm fine with that too. I learn a lot from Wallace, who teaches me how to stack it right, and it makes a difference. But when he started giving me creative projects, it wasn't really that I was building like construction. I was like creating body bags. I learned how to make a bunch of body bags. Me and Morgan worked on the giant reapers together. So he will start a project and we will all come together and do bits and pieces to help out where we can. He teaches us all how to use power tools. We're all using chainsaws, you know, within reason, and make sure we can actually be able to do it safely. We're all climbing ladders. Like everyone is capable of doing, like, if we need to pick it up real quick and just help so-and-so with this as we're walking by, something like that. Once the project gets to a certain point, then we're able to disperse and kind of focus on a more creative aspect of it, you know, within Eric's vision. So like, for example, Morgan got to do all the stick reapers, and we got to do all this stuff in the witch scene. And it's like, no project is the same, but a lot of them have similar like techniques that can apply to multiple things. And so each time you get put on a new project, it kind of like teaches you more about a different strategy, but something you're still kind of familiar with, and it helps the project go a lot faster. If that makes any sense at all. So I can help build. I have helped build. I helped with this pumpkin that you have up on the screen here. But like, you know, me and Wallace.
And that's a model, correct? The thing in the front is a model, and then behind that is the full size.
Yeah. So Eric builds these little models. They're so adorable. They're all in his workshop in his basement. Like literally every model except the mansion. That's a funny story for Eric to tell you though. And so then these are supposed to be to scale so that, you know, it sets up the whole project for success. Things might change a little bit, you know, to account for little hills that maybe weren't accounted for, but for the most part, it works out. But so my projects have been a little less about building an actual construction thing and more about making like monsters, I guess you could say.
The thing I love about all of the structures though is that like clearly they're all constructed because they're lasting for like 10 years, but they all look very organic. And you know, right now we're looking at clean wood as part of the construction process, but everything's covered with what just looks like aged and just as if like no care was taken, as if it's just monstrous, you know. So it's so cool. I love these structures so much. But you mentioned spring, summer, fall build.
Yes.
About how many people are on the team at that time doing all
it depends. Some years less, some years more. It also depends on people's availability. So typically it's Saturdays and Mondays are build days. Sometimes a whole bunch of people show up. That could be more than 10, 12 people on a Saturday. Sometimes build crew on Monday can be like 5 people, but sometimes it is up to 10 people. It really just depends. And some people come early and leave earlier. Some people come later, like me. I just kind of roll in pretty late, but I stay late. It really just depends. Eric is just grateful that anyone can come by, whatever day they can come by. As haunt season approaches, and it's kind of August into September, there's more days added. So Eric works a full-time job. He works 4, I believe, 10-hour days and then comes to the haunt. Wow. also has to dedicate some time to his wife as well. So he's juggling quite a bit. And so obviously having all this help is very nice to have. It also depends on the projects that he has. So he has to now carefully decide what needs to be done and who's capable of doing it or who wants to do it. Like some people don't want to go up ladders. They have a fear of heights. So you have to take that into consideration. Some people show up as teams. If they have a partner that they bring, which is very helpful to have like two people who can do to just be put on something specific up to a point where now Eric adds the final touches type of deal. So like, for example, we haven't done it this winter yet, but last winter and the previous winter, we were going to Eric's basement workshop and it was like me, Wallace, and Eric, or sometimes Morgan would come too. And we would work on like tombstones or skeletons. It's like a whole tedious thing. It took the entire winter to do. We didn't really have a lot of that to do this year. And Eric also has to focus on like taxes and all that other stuff. So we're talking about possibly making it to the basement, but we don't know. But usually it's late spring where we start to go over basically when the ground is like not frozen anymore and we can actually do stuff. We got really lucky one year when we were building Biscuit's new shack in the cornfield. We worked like all the way into winter and started like in winter again because it was just warm enough that we got quite a bit accomplished because the weather allowed it. So we just have to basically focus on the weather. And that's what happens too as haunt season approaches. We get tons of rain. And so you think you're getting ahead or you're on time. And then you have like every Saturday and Monday being rained out and you can only do so much. So you just have to account for that.
I'm going to show this video here. There's no audio with it, or I took off the audio. If you can just talk through what's happening here, that'd be great.
So this is the queue line. I assume that we're doing something with the new sawmill. So our sawmill used to be inside the trails and it was falling apart. So we took it down and basically moved it over like a little bit to the queue line. So we basically had to completely rebuild the entire sawmill. And it's about twice the length as it was before. So that's what's happening there. But just this is a good example of the fact that we cannot drive any machinery into the haunt. So everything has to be manually brought in by like a team of people or dragged in, or if you're strong enough, you just carry it in by yourself. And it's a lot of steps just in a day, just carrying lumber and just trying to bring it to where it's going to go, which sometimes that's what I do. I'm just there to transport lumber and hand it to somebody, or I'm the person getting the lumber to help put it up. So it's a lot of work. That sawmill was intense. These are my beloved pumpkin friends.
I was going to say, so these are some of the projects that it sounded like you were talking about earlier. Some of the, this isn't a body bag, but it looks like you are quite the pumpkin builder.
So this was really exciting because the picture of me sitting on the ground on the right was 2021, and Eric formed so there's like 7,000 steps to these. He does it with chicken wire and spray foam, and I believe balloons are involved. And he carved the pumpkins that I'm working on there. So he made their shape into a pumpkin and carved their faces. So I was supposed to be weatherproofing them and painting them. It was trial and error with how we did things that year. These pumpkins on the right are the big pumpkin monsters next to the giant skull in Pumpkin Alley. So then the pumpkin I'm working on in the picture on the left was supposed to be, I believe we were supposed to get to these, and what happens is a lot of times projects, we don't need it, put it on the back burner, we'll get to it years later. So these pumpkins went to new scarecrows out in the queue line. And I was very excited because I got to do steps I hadn't been able to do before because Eric did them. So I had help from Allie and Casey, and I got to turn them from just big balls of foam that was all uneven and this paint step. So basically you cover them with liquid cement. You let that dry. I think it's a few layers usually that I do. And then when that's dry, you basically cover it in black paint. And then you paint them orange. So this was like a never ending.
What's the benefit of the black paint and then the orange? I would think like white so that the orange. Why do you put black paint under the orange?
I think it just makes the orange pop more. I mean, we even paint the inside of their mouths yellow. But my guess is that if paint does come off, it's just like if the orange comes off, because we're using spray paint, and it's theoretically supposed to stick. But the issue with the previous pumpkins was we use Flex Seal to make them weatherproof. It says paint sticks to that, but it doesn't. So if you look close, some of the orange is coming off of the pumpkins, but they're black underneath. So it just looks like cool. It doesn't really matter. So the black is supposed to help the orange pop and like stay on the pumpkin. We had a black pumpkin just sitting in the end of the haunt, I think for an entire season, and people loved that thing. I was like, maybe we need some actually black pumpkins. But
That's awesome.
he's orange now. We painted him.
All right, so you work on a bunch of fake pumpkins, but I gotta say, one of the coolest things about Haunted Overload is the amount of real jack-o'-lanterns that you have. I think mostly the queue, probably throughout the attraction as well. But I'm remembering the queue, a bunch of them. And you run for what, at least 6 weeks, right? You start mid-September?
We open, I believe it's always, or it depends on how the days fall, but it seems to always be the second weekend of October is when we open. So I think we're only open for 4 weekends. Sometimes we get a little extra. I think this coming year we have one less show, but it goes all the way into November a little bit. So it's just how the dates fall. So when I started,
but a month of pumpkins. Pumpkins are not carved pumpkins do not last a month.
No,
I want to hear about who's carving these, how many times you need to replace them, etc., etc.
We have a whole pumpkin crew. They're amazing. There's this one couple, they bang out like a billion pumpkins in an hour. I don't even understand it. So when I first started, Pumpkin Alley was not as big. He had extended it after I started, and I believe it was like 100 pumpkins were carved, and now it's like 150 or 200 or maybe even more than that every single weekend. So we have the crew come in, I believe Tuesdays and Wednesdays maybe, and they carve all the pumpkins we need. And then we have Jackie carves our scarecrow pumpkins. Those are extra big pumpkins, and she does like very sharp looking faces. Like her carvings are really done really well. So there's like separate types of pumpkins we carve for separate things. And those get carved each week that we're open, and we try to keep them as long as we can. But when it gets warm and rainy, they get pretty nasty, and we got to toss them, especially after rain. So he buys like a bazillion pumpkins, and for Legendary Haunt Tour, we had 600 pumpkins. The craziest shit I've ever seen.
Do the pumpkins come from the farm that you're on, or is it from a different farm?
They do sell pumpkins, and we do get people confused thinking that we sell the pumpkins. But I believe these pumpkins come from Copple House or something. We get, maybe it's corn stalks that come from Copple House. But this year the pumpkins were really hard, or last year, because of the rain and the drought the year before, and it was just like all this stuff. We ended up having to get new pumpkins from some place in Maine, and they are not cheap. And it's because the ones we haven't even carved into them yet, and they were already getting soggy. So again, just one of those things, you just never know what's going to get thrown at you or the condition of your pumpkins. So they're in the queue, but they're also in Pumpkin Alley. We technically can't have anything really lit inside the haunt because of fire hazard. So they allow us to do it in Pumpkin Alley, and we do have some lit at the very end of the trail, like basically in the parking lot, like as you exit. So yeah, we have a whole candle crew. They light, one of them is Eric's sister. She's also an actor. They light them before we start, and they blow them all out at the end of the night. So they have their whole I tried to light 3 pumpkins for a photo shoot and I like could not do it for the life of me. So credit to them because they have to do it to light hundreds of pumpkins.
For those of you watching, like that might not sound like a big deal, but I just want to like clarify, it is really abnormal for fire safety codes and such for haunted houses to have real jack-o'-lanterns with real flames inside them. It's like kind of an amazing privilege that we get to witness that at Haunted Overload. I just remember the first time I like, because I my assumption was, oh, they're fake, and then I'm looking, I'm like, wait a sec, that's a real candle. You can't put a real candle inside of a pumpkin. Oh my God, these are real pumpkins. And there's like hundreds of them. It's really, and then my head goes, they're open for a month. They can't last the whole time. They're recarving pumpkins every week. This is insane. And frankly, this is something that, if this was just a corporate business looking at spreadsheets and stuff, one of the first things they would say is, hey, we can save a crap ton of money and time using fake pumpkins over and over again each year. They'll last for 10 years. Clearly, the people involved with Haunted Overload like have such a passion for it and like really respect the traditions of Halloween to keep this kind of insane part of the haunt alive. And as we said, it's not even part of the haunt. It's part of the queue and the exit, which we'll get to the queue in a bit. But I don't know, it's just wild to me. And I love everything about the fact that you guys do pumpkins like that.
Well, it's
Absolutely
like
amazing.
pumpkin therapy, you know. Sometimes I go, it's so crazy. I get to carve one if I'm lucky, and like I don't know. It's just I'm just glad that that is happening around me still in 2024. There's pumpkins being carved, even if I don't get to do it. Like just smelling the pumpkins, seeing like so many of them together. It's you literally need that for it to be Halloween.
Yeah. Now in these photos here, you can once again just kind of see the size of these structures in the middle of the woods. And I'll tell you, when you turn the corner or come out of the tunnel, however this mansion is revealed, it's like an oh wow moment. I was just like, although to be fair, there's tons of those throughout Haunted Overload where you just like go to the next corner and you're like, oh crap, like it's unbelievable. How long is it? Like, not even time wise, but do you know length? Is it? I don't know.
It's a little, I think it's a little over a mile long at this
Jesus.
point. And I love when we get those lovely reviews that say they blasted through in 15 minutes. And I'm like, I can't even do that alone walking like at a normal pace. So you must have went the wrong way. But
Or they were running from the monsters, one or the other.
could be. They could be. But this mansion I would say is probably the most photographed thing next to the skull, which is in Pumpkin Alley. Um the mansion every it gets put on abandoned pages all the time and everyone's like, "Oh, it's too bad they let that house go," and, "Oh, I wish I could go." And I'm like, "You can't. That haunted overload." But Eric, one of the things Eric does with some of his structures, like he did it with the mansion and he did it with um the mine shaft, the entrance of the mine shaft, is he basically finds photos of like the style of house or mine shaft that he likes, and he pieces together certain aspects of each one that he likes. So this mansion doesn't exist in real life because it's 3 different mansions, I believe he said, pieced together. Um, and it was put together by 5 guys in 500 hours, and I think in a single season. It was before my time, but because everyone's obsessed with it, I have to know everything about it because it's always mentioned, which it should be. It is magical. But I don't know what part of it I like more, the outside, the inside. Do I like it better in winter? I have videos of it with snow falling, but also like in the middle of summer, it's like hiding in the trees. So, um, excuse my cat trying to be part of the conversation. Um,
Yeah, I
so
was going to mention you do get to walk through this too. Like a lot, these giant set pieces are not just, yes, they have the off factor when you see them, but then you walk through these structures and they're all scenic design inside of them as well.
yeah, the inside of this mansion is absolutely amazing. I explore real abandoned places and houses, and it is as authentic as you could be. Especially now after it's has some age on it, and there's some things that need to be repaired. You're like, no, this is pretty accurate. I also wanted to mention before the body bags that I built were the ones in the picture with me. I stood next to them for comparison. I'm short anyway, but I got to be a body bag that year and hide among them, which was pretty cool to do because, you know, at night you can't really tell. And they're supposed to look like actors in costume so that people don't know who's going to jump out. It was really fun. I love those.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Here we just got some of the team. I keep wanting to have people in these photos just to show the scale of these, because I think sometimes in just a photo you don't get it. But the skull on the right, like I think you said that was like the other most photographed thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that skull is Eric's pride and joy. I mean, nobody has anything that looks like that. And if they do, it's because they copied him. So,
Yeah.
like, that's right
Yeah.
out of Eric's imagination and skill set. And it's like the coolest thing ever. The dragon is also built like that with the slab pieces or whatever you call those. And the pumpkin, the giant pumpkin that we're still going to be working on this year, is going to be made the same way too. So it's kind of like his thing.
And what's on the left here?
That's the gargoyle who took the place of the cactus skull that I had mentioned earlier.
That's what I
Um,
thought. Yeah.
I wish I think his wingspan is, God, I don't know. If Morgan's in the chat, maybe she knows. I think it's 20 feet each wing. I don't know. Could be more. It was a pain in the ass to lug those things through because there's no easy way to get something that big in or out. And we had to paint. They were welded by Viking welding. We had to spray paint them black. And then we put the fabric on them and burned little holes in it for appearance and the fact that we wanted the air to pass through them, because I mean, we're taking a huge risk putting those up there. Any kind of amount of snow or crazy wind or even a tree falling would knock those wings down. Um, so that was a very interesting project. And as far as I know, one of the first times Eric has attempted to do something like that. And he's like pretty amazing. Like he has the sound system is in inside of the building that he's on top of, and it like
Mm.
vibrates when you walk by. Like it's deafeningly loud. Poor Bryce is usually in front of him doing chainsaw, so it's like you got chainsaw in your face and a gargoyle screaming at you. It's pretty great. Might need
Very
earplugs.
cool.
Yeah.
As we were talking about, the interior of these spaces
Yeah.
as well need to be full of details and such. And I'm going to assume you probably work on some of this as well, collecting and
Yeah.
creating these
This
kind of
was
props.
a project me and Morgan started in the winter. If you look up at the top, you'll see top left here, you'll see there's looks like a barn owl. It's made out of clay. So that's how the project started. A lot of these bottles have some clay, like, you know, monsters or whatever put onto the bottles, but we started to run out of time. So we started, she was saving dead flowers, Eric's wife was saving dead flowers, and we were just putting like miscellaneous flowers and animal bones in them. Um, and then I have a bunch of animals. So a bunch of my snake sheds are in there and tarantula molts are in a bunch of them. So like these are a very like personal things that like mean a lot to like me and Morgan. And we've had help. People were bringing us bottles, and our friend Kat also added some things to it. And we were just trying to find, it's really hard to like, we have a lot of props glued and nailed down because kids come and take it. So finding rotten enough looking shelves that were also practical to glue stuff to is really difficult. So we tried our best to make it look like not brand new, but also be able to secure these bottles down. Some of them have come off. But this is something we want to keep adding to. So pretty much when we start a scene, especially like, for example, the Reapers were just the big Reapers. Now there's regular sized Reapers with them. So the goal is to keep making it more and more and more. And so we wanted to keep just making tons and tons of sticks everywhere and just make it look really lived in, but also abandoned at the same time. So me and Morgan like love this witch area. We're very, very proud of how the inside of the house looks and even just how the whole scene comes together before you go into the witch house. People are terrified. They don't want to go in here. We have Rob in there trying to summon people in. He's like telling them to come in. He's like calling them twits because they're just looking at him like, we go in there. And it's like, where else would you go? The light is telling you to go that way. So even when it was Biscuit's Hillbilly Shack, before we transformed it into the witch area, people didn't want to go in it. So that's a common spot where we need actors to push people through because they just stand there like, oh, I don't want to go in. So I mean, it's dark, but like, aren't you there to be scared? I don't get it.
I love these trees kind of just living in the woods here. And we talked about the wooded area a bit and kind of the weather. And you said, people are showing up in the rain and stuff. So do you pretty much stay open for most types of weather? I mean, that's a huge problem for the haunt industry in New England, is weather can destroy your season.
We are open no matter what the weather. I did not experience this, but one year it was snowing and they were still open.
Wow. And people
whatever
show
actors,
up.
whatever actors show up, we do what we can with them and keep scaring people. It's pretty great. There was one night where it was pretty icy, but it's just like, whatever, you just go with it. We're from New England. We're supposed to be like used to this, I love these tree monsters. We don't have these right now, or kind of, we do. These are, I believe, from Cobble House, and we are making new ones. I should say Eric is making new ones in the queue line. The first one's name is Angela. She's the only one that's really done right now, but we're supposed to have, I think, 6 of them in the queue line. It's just that he uses a carving saw and it can take literally an entire day just to start a face. So yeah, wild. So far the trees will be ladies, our reapers are boys. They all have names. Our big reapers, we're a bunch of weirdos.
So Haunted Overload, we touched on this a little bit, but I will say my first time experiencing it, I live out in California now, but I was home visiting family in Massachusetts, and I was like, I want to go do Haunted Overload. So I go to the website, I go to buy tickets, and like no availability for the time I was home. So first of all, I will say, if you want to buy tickets this Halloween season, get them early. But
they sell out before half the season's over.
It's crazy. But the one option I did have was a daytime walk. So you have the day walk, you have the main event, you have Fright Night Light, you have Blackout Night. Can we talk a little bit about all these? The main event is basically what we've been looking at. It's lit, it's full of actors. That's the main event. But I mean, look at this during daylight. It's gorgeous.
It's intense. So I don't know. I want to say I think I like the day walk better for the sake of seeing Pumpkin Alley and other various scenes, like the witch area, I think looks really nice in the daytime. So the day walk is basically geared towards people who are too afraid to come at night or have been at night before and want to see it look different during the day. And it's more of a leisurely stroll. Like you could spend 4 hours in the day walk. No one's gonna rush you out unless you come late and we need you to leave so we can open for the night. But the main event is basically where we're trying to push you through, we're trying to keep the line moving so that people aren't waiting 2 hours on a Saturday night at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. The day walk is not as much pressure, and the Fright Night Light is very similar. We are trying to get you through the castle into the haunt, but like if you want to pull over and really take a good look around, you can do that. Just make sure people can pass you. It's not really as much of a stressful like rush them through. And the Fright Night Light is really good for people who want to see it at night but really don't want to be scared. That's not to say that we're not walking around with our headlamps and scare you by accident. That's not our fault. Happens all the time. But you know what I really love to see in the day walk that I don't think anyone thinks about is dads scaring their wives and their children. Like I'm just sitting there working on corn stalks and a dad will come bombing around the corner to hide. And then he'll be like, shh. And then they come around the corner and he scares them. And it's like, this is supposed to be no scare, but like they're having such a good time. It's like a huge playground. And I really like when people like really get into it and, they're so excited that they're like not even thinking about what's going on around them. And they're, running around corners to hide from their family. Sometimes that happens at night too during the main event. When I was a body bag, some guy did that to his girlfriend. But obviously he didn't know I was standing there. So after he scared her, I scared him, and she like died. She was so happy.
That's
She's all
awesome.
pissed off at him. So people really get into the spirit. But it happens mostly during the day walk. And the day walk is also good because a lot of people have elderly family or people in wheelchairs and stuff like that. And, you know, they can still make it through for a main event, but we would like to get them through like first and a little early if we could. For their sake and everybody else's sake. But the day walk is great for people like that because you can sit and take your time and there's absolutely no rush at all. But, you know, I know people who, of all ages, really, who come to both several times a year. Not Friday Night Light, but they'll do the main event and the day walk multiple times.
Yeah, if you're not too scared, I can't imagine doing one and not immediately thinking, "Oh my God, I have to do the other," because that's how I felt. Was I did a daytime first, and I was like, I have to come back, and so it took me a year to get back and have tickets available and stuff. But I came back the following year and did it at night. Was just absolutely blown away. And I've done it at night twice and during the day once. What was that?
What I tell people to do, if you plan ahead, what I usually tell people to do is come to the day walk, then come to the night event the exact same day, but go down the street. Um, Stripe 9 Brewery makes a pumpkin ale for us, and we're like, our name is on the can. There's a headless horseman on it. I have one somewhere. Um, and they have the best pizza ever. It's not like pizza, it's like pizza. You know what I mean? And then they have like real food, and they have all the gluten-free, the vegetarian. I love their food. And getting the beer there is amazing. And so I always tell people, come to the day walk, go eat there, and then come back for the main event. I even got one of my friends to bring me pizza from there while I was
Yeah,
acting. I had to take it from them and run away. But
I will say.
it makes
Sorry, go ahead.
it makes for a full day, so you don't have to go back and forth for two different events on two different days. Because I know some people, when they travel here, they only have like one chance to see the haunt, especially if they're traveling from far away.
And if you haven't been convinced thus far, I will just say personal experience, like this is a haunt worth making a destination, right? Like, so if you don't live too close to it, I highly suggest like seeking it out, planning around it, and then maybe finding other stuff in the area to do before the evening or whatever. But like this is one worth going out of your way for. This isn't just like, oh, it's the neighborhood haunt, let's check it out. No. Get to Haunted
It
Overload.
was
It's
the
incredible. By
neighborhood
the way,
haunt once, though.
what?
It was the neighborhood haunt once, though.
It was at one point, that's right. But I am not being paid by Haunted Overload. I am just raving from personal experience. I love it. It's so much fun. Guys, we are running a little short on time, so just want to remind you, if you have any questions, put it in the Q&A, please. Do not put it in the comments. I will not be checking those. I will check the Q&A when we have a few minutes left, and we'll get to those.
And
But let's wrap things.
donuts. Don't
And
forget about those apple cider donuts. So you said something how you're not paid from Haunted Overload. Something I do want to say is that we are all volunteers.
which is
So,
insane. Like this is
so
one
that the
of the
proceeds
best.
can go to the animals
This is one
and
of
the
the best
farm.
haunts that's around, and like it's for charity. It blows my mind. I mean, God, you can make so much money. It's so good. But one of the things I want to mention real quickly is a lot of what we've been looking at. This is Q. This, I believe, is Q. That castle on the right there, that's the entrance to the actual attraction. I have never, like, this is theme park level Q. If you've done Wizarding World of Harry Potter and walked through Hogwarts, or Indiana Jones Adventure at Disneyland and walked through those caves, like that is the level of Q for this
Well, we don't
attraction.
want you to be bored. Sometimes you really are. If you came late on a Saturday and you came for like a 9 o'clock ticket time, you could be waiting 2 hours. So the reason we make the queue so ridiculous is because there's always going to be something to look at, take pictures of, take pictures with. We have actors in the queue line too. So we want to keep you as occupied and unbored as humanly possible while you wait. So that's why I always say do not be the first ticket, because then you have no time. You're just like waltzing through pretty fast.
Yeah.
And you want to
No,
be
I
able to
agree.
actually
Yeah, it's actually great if you do have to wait. I mean, 2 hours is long. I've never had to wait that long personally. But what I will say is like when you're going through the haunt, you're kind of going through, I don't want to say at a fast pace, but you're, you're keeping an eye out for actors and all that stuff. You don't have the time to like kind of stand and ponder and look at these things. The queue allows you to do it, and the queue has just as much detail as the actual walkthrough haunt. So it's really fantastic. There you are, I believe, on the right, getting ready to scare some folks with your chainsaw. There's the chainsaw
It is an
brigade.
honor. It is an honor to be invited to do chainsaw acting and to have a picture with Eric in chainsaw characters. So I have Morgan to thank for that. She was the like psycho lunatic running around with the chainsaw like a maniac. And then she's like, "You should do it with me. We'll just match." And she wouldn't let it go. She was like, "Use my chainsaw." So she tried to teach me how to do it, and I was really bad at it. So he gave us these little baby saws. So really for me, because so I could actually turn it on. Morgan doesn't need the baby saw, but yeah, so we do the chainsaws together, but we also have witch characters to do separately. Chainsaw takes a lot out of you. I don't know how Eric does it every single night, and he goes 1,000%. So we need breaks because we're tired.
Awesome. We are running a little short on time, so we're gonna try and bang through some questions quickly here. We got one from Alexandra. Hello, Alexandra. Welcome. Chainsaws are an essential tool for building at Haunted Overload in unconventional ways. I'd love to hear you, Niki, talk about how they use chainsaws to create the giant sculptures. Can you touch on that real quickly?
So Eric uses the chainsaws to basically carve, like for example, the gargoyle to carve certain like roundness to certain parts of their bodies, especially things like the dragon and the skull. Sometimes there's really no easy way to get to certain parts, so he's literally doing it one-handed with like a carving saw, and it's like amazing to watch him just be able to do that. But we usually have several different types of saws for regular building and then a different one for when he tries to like shape a monster. We don't do that part. Eric usually does the final touches because he is the professional.
Perfect. Donna wants to know, we touched on this a little bit, is it wheelchair accessible? I know that there are ramps through the queue and stuff. It is, it is walking through the woods. I'm not gonna lie, it's not like an easy situation, but it sounds like you all do accept wheelchairs going through.
It is doable. If you have a wheelchair and you want to come early and let us know, and we'll try to get you in first. If we can. If it's the day walk, then just come whenever. I mean, it's the woods. We try to keep it wood chipped, and we try to make sure the roots are not in the way and stuff like that. Of course, that's like a hazard. We do our absolute best, but it's uneven terrain because it is in the woods. So if you get some help, or if you're like the strongest person ever, you can just wheel your way through there and it'll be all good. I've seen some elderly people in wheelchairs bombing through there at night, 10 o'clock at night. Could not believe it. I was like, they do not need my help. They're good. So it's possible.
Perfect. Someone wants to know, my dad and I are hoping to be able to go here this Halloween season. How soon should we buy tickets and how early should we arrive? So when do tickets go on sale? I will say, buy if you know you want to go, look at their calendar, which they'll have in advance.
Yes.
It's on hauntedoverload.com. Figure out what night you want to go and buy them as soon as you can because it sells out. But you can answer a little better.
As far as I know, tickets usually become available in March, and there will be an announcement on the haunt page when they become available. Buy them right away. The ticket time, the time on your ticket is supposed to be your parking time, I believe, but you can show up as early as you would like. I usually tell people like show up 10 minutes before your ticket time if you want to be able to navigate the parking. But the earlier you come, the earlier ticket time you buy, the better, especially if you have never been before and you just need to figure out where you are. So I believe some nights we open at 6:30, sometimes we open at 7. So it would just depend on the night that you go.
Perfect. Steve wants to know, what's your favorite memory of a guest scare?
So I was in a coffin in the Devil's Den, and I was chainsaw with Morgan, And I jumped into the coffin just to scare this group of teenage girls because you could hear them screaming from across the haunt, which see her hiding on the other side. She chainsawed, scared one of the girls so bad she fell and head first into my coffin and was like between my boot and the back of the coffin.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, oh my God. I went to go ask her if she was okay. They didn't even see me. And then I tried to like reach out and be like, do you need help? And then I scared them and they fell backwards. But Morgan didn't even see it. She did the saw and ran away. It's like she didn't even get to reap the benefits of what I witnessed, but it was amazing. I would say that was probably the best one, the most ridiculous, like head in the coffin. I couldn't believe it.
Nice. Jamie wants to know, what's the bathroom situation like?
So we have porta potties. They get cleaned regularly. They're a great company. And it is the best ever when they drop them off because they give the actors a little secret one and it makes building so much easier. So
Nice. And Sean wants to know, how would one inquire about volunteering for the haunt?
if you go on their website, there should be a link on there about volunteering, and you would talk to the lovely Tom. He is in charge of the actors and figuring out like where we would need to place you. And Eric is pretty good about like letting you decide, oh, maybe you could be this character. If you have an idea for a character, maybe Tom would know where to put that character, or you can wait to see what's needed and base it around that. But definitely go to the website. I forget what the link is called, but it should say something about volunteers on there.
All right, we got two final questions. No more Q&A, please. We're running out of time here. But Brianna wants to know, what is your favorite part of being a character? I'm possibly thinking about giving scare acting a try at a local haunt. I will just say personal experience, not at Haunted Overload. It's exhausting and it's way harder than you think. I'll start with that. But Niki, your answer?
The best thing I can say is this is the advice Eric always gives, that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Is that right?
Yeah.
None of us take that advice and we always run ourselves ragged. Don't do that, but it's hard not to because it is the funnest thing ever when you figure out what works for you to scare someone and what you're comfortable with. You become immediately addicted and it's like you can't stop. We do it all build season too because we just can't control ourselves. But the other thing is that scaring is not always a success. I would say mine is about 50-50, and you don't be discouraged. Don't quit scare acting because you didn't scare every single person you saw. Some people are scared, they just hide it well, like me. I don't have a reaction, but they still get me. So
Very nice. And final question of the day, Alexandra wants to know, what would Niki say that she has learned the most from Eric? Example, is there a certain skill he's taught her, or a creative approach, or the way he works and collaborates with his crew?
something I've learned from Eric. I would say it's funny. The most I've ever learned from Eric isn't even related to the haunt. He's super healthy because from working outside 24/7, he's had Lyme disease. So he's practically like me and Morgan's like healthy vitamin doctor at this point, and he sends us TikToks all day long. But it also helps us survive haunt season. And a lot of that has to do with like his saying like, oh, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but that applies to build season too. And after working with him, this will be my 5th season now. I'm starting to finally understand like the steps that it takes to get from building from scratch, and then like the monster is finally the monster that you imagined. So I guess he's taught me patience, and you have to trust the process of it, like because sometimes it can be really hard and you really think like this is never gonna it's just never going to work, but then it works. You just have to trust that it's going to work.
Perfect. Folks, you can learn more at hauntedoverload.com. I also want to take a quick minute to talk about a project I have coming up on Sunday, February 25th. I'm throwing a Haunted Mansion reunion at the Ghostly Retreat here in Southern California. If you happen to be in Southern California, check out tinyurl.com/mansion reunion. The Ghostly Retreat is an amazing, you can see it in that center photo there. That is an Airbnb. That is not the Haunted Mansion. This guy has created the coolest Airbnb that looks just like Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. And I gathered a bunch of the talents who worked on the Haunted Mansion and its offspring, various Disney haunted attractions. And on the left side is an original piece of artwork that a Disney illustrator created for this event. All of those special guests will be there autographing them for you. So check it out, tinyurl.com/mention reunion. If you want to come back for more of these live streams, they are happening every third Thursday of the month. You can sign up for them all right now, just where you did for this one. So thank you for joining. Niki, thank you so much for being here. Welcome back, Mina. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Absolutely. Amazing. I can't wait to go there. I'm going to keep a lookout for the tickets in March.
He did say March and that it would be announced on the page. So
I am totally there. So I want to say thanks to everybody who came and asked your questions and listened in and chatted with us. And we hope to see you next month. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Good night, everybody.